Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Cary Jordan. I'm 30 years old, and I want to start by saying something my father used to tell me. Hard work doesn't always get you noticed. But disrespect? That'll burn your name into their memory. I never fully understood that until the day my boss fired me. I wasn't stealing. I wasn't slacking. I wasn't even asking for more than I deserved. I was doing what every underpaid, overworked professional eventually considers, exploring options. But let me rewind. I joined Sandcrest Solutions the same year I turned 26. Bright-eyed, debt-ridden, and determined to climb. It was my first real job after grad school. Marketing analyst turned senior consultant within 2 years. I brought in clients no one else could. I cleaned up messes no one wanted to deal with. And every time I asked about a raise. Next quarter, Cary. That phrase became my anthem. A lullaby Denise Morgan, my manager, used to put my ambition to sleep. Denise was the type who loved buzzwords like agility, synergy, and visibility, but when it came to acknowledging actual effort, she had the emotional range of a spreadsheet. I still remember the smirk on her face during one of our one-on-ones when I showed her the revenue growth charts for my accounts. She barely glanced. Good numbers, Cary. But let's stay focused on team wins. Translation, you did great. But I'm not giving you credit. I let it go. Over and over again. Because like a fool, I believed if I stayed loyal long enough, someone upstairs would notice. They didn't. Instead, I watched Denise get promoted to VP. Watched her take credit for deals I closed. Watched her hand cushy assignments to people she played tennis with, literally, tennis. I got used to sitting through meetings where people mispronounced my name and forgot I'd been the one to turn around our biggest client account. But what finally broke me? It was when she hired her cousin. Jake. Jake had a degree in hospitality, no consulting experience, and his biggest claim to fame was networking at Coachella. And yet, somehow, Jake was hired as a strategic growth associate and put on the same pay scale as me. When I found out, I didn't yell. I didn't even argue. I just closed my laptop that night and updated my resume. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my closest coworker, Trina, who knew every line of Denise's corporate playbook by heart. I figured I'd quietly browse openings, interview if something promising came along. Turns out, something did. North Spire Analytics. The call came from someone named Devin Langley, Director of Strategy. Said he'd heard about my work through a mutual connection. Asked if I'd be open to a conversation. I was. We met the following week. And for the first time in 4 years, someone asked me what I wanted, not just what I could do for them. At the end of the second interview, Devin looked me in the eye and said, "Cary, you're undervalued where you are. We'd be lucky to have you." And just like that, I remembered what confidence felt like. The offer. A 35% salary increase, stock options, flexible work schedule, leadership track. Everything Sandcrest had promised in whispers but never delivered. I didn't jump right away. I wanted to do things professionally. Properly. So I asked Denise for a meeting. I prepared reports, proof of performance, client testimonials, competitive salary benchmarks. She didn't even look at them. "This isn't the right time to talk numbers, Cary. You know the budget's tight." Right. Tight. But not too tight for Jake's business class flights and Denise's monthly, executive coaching sessions, at that 5-star spa retreat in Napa. I nodded politely. Then I made my choice. I'd made my decision. After 4 years of loyalty, I was walking. But not with a bang, just a clean, professional exit. That was the plan. I had drafted a simple, respectful resignation letter. I printed it at home, packed it in a manila folder, and brought it with me on a Monday morning like any other. The air outside smelled like rain and exhaust. It always did in Seattle. My heart was racing. But I was ready. Denise, of course, was too busy to meet with me that morning. Kelly, her assistant, said I could try again around 3 p.m. So I waited. I went about my day, answered emails, joined 2 client calls, and finished a quarterly performance brief that Jake was supposed to handle, because of course, Jake had gone off-grid for mental clarity again. At 2:57 p.m., I knocked on Denise's office door. She was on a Zoom call. Her manicured hand waved me in like I was an intern. I stood, folder in hand, and waited quietly as she wrapped up. 5 minutes later, she clicked mute and gave me the fakest smile I've ever seen. "What's up, Cary?" "No, thank you for waiting." No curiosity. Just that clipped tone that always said, "Whatever you're about to say better not make my life harder." I handed her the folder. "This is my formal resignation. I've accepted another opportunity." Her smile evaporated. For a second, her face flickered like a dropped video feed. Then she recovered. "You've accepted. Without discussing it with me first." I stood firm. "There's nothing to discuss. I've been more than clear about my performance and my expectations for growth. I've tried. You made it clear nothing was going to change." She laughed. A single, dry chuckle that sounded more insulted than amused. "You think you'll get better treatment somewhere else? Cary, you have no idea how much I've protected you." That was rich. Protected me? From what? Recognition. "I've already signed the contract," I said. "I'm giving you 2 weeks to transition my accounts." She picked up the resignation letter like it was a used tissue. Her eyes scanned it, and then she calmly placed it down. "You won't be needing 2 weeks." I blinked. "Excuse me. We'll end your employment today. I'll have IT shut off your access by COB. Kelly will supervise you while you pack." I was stunned. Not surprised, but stunned. For years, and she was kicking me out like a thief. No exit interview. No knowledge transfer. No handshake or farewell email. Just exile. I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up a hand. "Before you say anything, I should let you know we're aware you interviewed with a direct competitor. We consider that a serious conflict of interest." There it was. The lie. She was spinning my departure as betrayal. "That's absurd," I said, heat rising in my chest. "I did it on my own time. It was a career decision, not corporate espionage." "Doesn't matter," she replied coolly. "The optics aren't good. And I will be sharing this with our leadership team, and any references they might call." I realized then that she wasn't just pushing me out. She was trying to ruin me. Burn my reputation, poison my new start, make me untouchable. I nodded slowly, like I understood. Like I wasn't panicking inside. "Understood," I said. "I'll pack up now." I walked out of her office and back to my desk. Trina looked up, her eyes wide. "What happened?" I just shook my head and forced a smile. "Just tying up loose ends." Inside, I was a wreck. All I could think about was how fast she'd flipped the narrative. In under 5 minutes, she'd erased my legacy, my loyalty, and everything I'd done for that company. I sat in the driver's seat of my car, staring at the Sandcrest building through the windshield as the first drops of rain began to fall. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. Rage? Maybe. But more than that, humiliation. I wasn't even allowed to say goodbye to the clients I'd grown relationships with. No final message. No closure. Just disappear. And that night, she called North Spire. I know because Devon texted me. Just a heads up. Denise Morgan from Sandcrest called about you. Said she had ethical concerns. We didn't entertain it. Your work speaks for itself. See you Monday. I stared at the screen, breath shallow. That text saved me. If it had come from anyone else, I might have curled up in defeat. But not now. Because at that moment, I realized something. Denise thought she had all the power. She thought she could control how I left, what people thought of me, and whether I'd succeed. She was wrong. She didn't know the whole story. Because she didn't know what I had. She didn't know about Project Lantern. I didn't sleep that night. My apartment was dead silent, but my thoughts screamed louder than a jet engine. I kept hearing Denise's voice in my head. We're aware you interviewed with a competitor. I'll be sharing this with leadership. You won't be needing 2 weeks. I felt like a fool, discarded like office trash. For years of work erased because I dared to want better. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. What does she think she's protecting? What made her so confident she could treat me like this and still come out clean? That's when I remembered something. Something I wasn't supposed to remember. It was from 9 months earlier. I had just wrapped up a client call and was heading to the small upstairs conference room to grab a marketing brief I'd left behind. When I opened the door, I realized someone was still inside. Denise. On a video call. Her voice was low, clipped, almost whispering. No, I didn't loop finance in, just adjust the numbers for Q2 and send them directly to me. The board doesn't need to see the full breakdown unless revenue flags again. I froze. I didn't move. Just stood there, hidden behind the door. Something about her tone was off. We'll push the deferred bonuses into Q4. Makes the Q2 report look stronger. We need to protect optics right now. Optics. She said it the same way she said team wins or cultural fit. Corporate code for manipulation. I backed away before she saw me. At the time, I didn't think much of it, just Denise doing Denise things. Massaging numbers, spinning narratives, always in survival mode. But now it felt different. Now it felt like something I could use. So I started digging. The next morning, I logged into my personal OneDrive. Because here's the thing Denise forgot, I'd been running Project Lantern. It wasn't the official name. Just something I called it on my own, an internal auditing framework I'd designed in my spare time to track operational waste and consultant client cost alignment. I'd pitched it twice at leadership meetings, but Denise waved it off as too granular. She never implemented it. But I kept it. Refined it. And ran it once every quarter out of habit. Including last quarter. And the data I had? It was explosive. I didn't know how bad things were until I lined up the columns, deferred expenses, budget reallocations, and unreported client churn. On paper, Sandcrest's Q2 looked like their best in 5 years. But under the surface? They were hemorrhaging. Client renewals were down 18%. Travel expenses had tripled, thanks to Jake's business retreats. Bonus structures had been shifted entirely off the books, likely to avoid board scrutiny. It wasn't just corporate sleaze, it was cooked books. And Denise had signed off on all of it. The files I had weren't stolen. They were built using publicly accessible financial reports, client feedback forms, and internal metrics I'd collected myself over years of doing everyone else's job. It was my own intellectual property. And it painted a very ugly picture. I called Trina that afternoon. She was hesitant at first, whispering from her car in a Whole Foods parking lot, but when I told her what I'd found, she went quiet. Cary, they've been blaming you. What? Since you left, Denise said you mismanaged the Landcroft account. She's feeding the exec team this narrative that you lost the client and that's why things are off track. My blood turned cold. Landcroft was fully renewed before I even left. Doesn't matter. She's rewriting the script. She says your departure destabilized the team and that you were already disengaged months before. I sat down on the edge of my bed. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was war. Denise was rewriting history, and if I didn't fight back, she'd bury me. Trina, you ever hear of Project Lantern? You mean your analytics thing? The one she ignored? Yeah. I've got it. All of it. And it shows exactly how she's been covering up her failures. There was a pause. Cary, if that's true, this could take her down. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Not just her. If the board sees this, heads will roll. What are you going to do? I looked down at my laptop, at the folders labeled Q2 and Lantern_Final. And I made a decision. This wasn't about getting even. This was about telling the truth, loudly, publicly, and without fear. Denise had turned my exit into a warning to others. Now I was going to turn my return into a reckoning. But I couldn't go it alone. I'd need help. A platform. And a strategy she'd never see coming. I stared at my laptop for what felt like hours that night. The blinking cursor at the end of my Project Lantern report pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, calm, waiting. This wasn't just a revenge plan anymore. This was a message. You don't get to burn people and walk away clean. I didn't want to destroy Sandcrest. I didn't want scorched earth. But Denise? She'd earned what was coming. And if a few arrogant board members had to be shaken in the process, so be it. The first step, protect myself. I called Devin Langley at North Spire Analytics first thing the next morning. I need to speak to legal. Not because there's an issue, because there might be one. He didn't hesitate. By 11 a.m., I was in a conference call with a company attorney, explaining how I'd independently built the Lantern analysis framework, and how the data was compiled using publicly accessible figures and anonymized client feedback. The verdict? As long as nothing you're using was downloaded from Sandcrest's private systems after termination, you're in the clear. You own the framework, and no one can stop you from sharing concerns with relevant parties. Perfect. Next, find allies. Trina was the first. But she wasn't the last. Over the next week, I had quiet conversations with 3 other former Sandcrest employees, people who'd left in the last 2 years, all under performance concerns or team disruption labels. All 3 had glowing resumes. All 3 had been pushed out after challenging Denise's decisions. And all 3 had heard whispers that their exits were strategic. One of them, Lena, had filed an internal complaint 6 months before leaving. She claimed Denise had reassigned her high-value accounts to Jake, without explanation, and had then given her the lowest performance review of her career. No HR follow-up. No record of the complaint in her file. I thought I was going crazy, she told me. You weren't, I said. You were a threat. By the end of the week, I had enough testimony to draw a pattern. Suppress, discredit, discard. That was Denise's MO. Especially when someone got too good. The final piece? The board. Sandcrest's executive board had 5 members. I knew their names. I'd seen them walk through the office in tailored suits with gloved smiles and tight schedules. But what I also knew, thanks to LinkedIn, industry chatter, and a little late-night research, was that 2 of them had been quietly seeking external investors for a future merger. They needed numbers to look perfect. Denise's phony Q2 report. That wasn't just unethical. It was fraud with intent to mislead investors. And I had proof. I compiled everything into a single digital file. I called it the mirror. Because that's what it was, holding up a mirror to a company that prided itself on ethics while rotting from the inside. Inside the file. A PDF of Project Lantern's findings, with financial discrepancies flagged and cross-referenced with public quarterly reports. A timeline of Denise's actions post-Q2, including employee reassignments, client churn, and sudden bonus deferrals. Signed and anonymized testimonials from former employees. A copy of a client feedback email from Landcroft that specifically praised my leadership, a direct contradiction to Denise's accusation. A cover letter addressed to the board, with a simple, pointed opening sentence. Before you stake your future on false performance metrics, you deserve to know the truth. I sent it to all 5 board members through their personal business emails. No dramatic speech. No anonymous sender. Just my name, my credentials, and the cold, unvarnished truth. I didn't expect a reply. But I did expect a response. Meanwhile, at North Spire, I kept my head down and delivered results. Devon pulled me into more leadership discussions. Clients trusted me. Coworkers respected me. The same skills that were ignored at Sandcrest. Now they were opening doors. And yet, every time I passed the espresso bar or sat down in a meeting, a thought gnawed at the back of my mind. Has the storm started yet? It had. I just hadn't seen the lightning, yet. 2 weeks after sending the dossier, I received an encrypted message on my personal email. It was from Peter Garland, one of the board members. The subject line. Let's talk. The body of the email was short. Thank you for your disclosure. You've given us a lot to review. Internal investigation is underway. Confidentiality appreciated. That's when I knew, Denise was no longer protected. But I wasn't done yet. I still had one more play to make. One more twist to ensure this wasn't just justice, it was poetic. I reached out to Peterson & Klein, a PR firm I used to partner with on client branding. They owed me a favor after I helped save their Nest Corp account from tanking. Hey, Jamie. Quick question. Are you still handling the quarterly reputation audits for mid-size consultancies? Yup. Just wrapped one for Sandcrest last month. Why? I'd like to request a supplemental audit. Through a third party. Completely legal and transparent. But I think you'll want to see what comes up. I sent Jamie a redacted version of Project Lantern. 3 days later, they published an independent industry insight article in a widely read Business Digest. It didn't mention Denise by name. But it called out a prominent Seattle-based consulting firm with evidence of internal manipulation and misreported growth figures. The article ended with a simple question. Is your company's growth a real achievement, or just a well-dressed illusion? Denise hadn't responded publicly. But she didn't have to. Because by now, everyone was watching. And the next move would be hers. Or so she thought. I woke up to 3 missed calls. 2 were from unknown numbers. The third? Sandcrest's Human Resources Director. And just like that, I knew the grenade had gone off. The article Jamie's team published had started making the rounds in consulting circles, and while it didn't mention names, anyone who'd ever worked at Sandcrest, or competed against them, knew exactly who it was about. I got a text from Trina around noon. She's panicking, Cary. She just called an emergency all-hands and blamed external parties for trying to sabotage the firm. But the board's already having closed-door meetings without her. Denise's kingdom was starting to crumble. And I wasn't done yet. See, I knew Denise. I knew her pride was bigger than her shame. So when she read that article, and she would have read it, she wouldn't go quietly. No, she'd try to pivot. To reframe the narrative like she always had. That's why I planned something she wouldn't be able to spin. Something undeniable. The moment arrived exactly 5 days later. Peterson Industries, the client I'd personally managed for 2 years at Sandcrest, sent a letter of termination. Not a casual email. A formal, legal document. They were cutting ties with Sandcrest, and naming North Spire Analytics as their new exclusive strategic partner. And at the top of the client's letter? My name. Requested lead consultant, Cary Jordan. Devon called me into his office, holding the printed letter like it was a trophy. Cary, you didn't just win back a client, you torpedoed their largest account. I hope you know what that means. I do, I said. It means Denise is going to lose it. He nodded. She already has. That afternoon, I received an anonymous tip via LinkedIn. It was a screenshot of Denise's internal memo, sent to the Sandcrest executive team. In it, she accused a disgruntled ex-employee of manipulating Peterson Industries and coordinating a smear campaign through third-party publications. But here's what Denise didn't know. Peterson's CEO, Lana Keller, had personally reached out to North Spire. Not only had she requested me, but she'd told Devon during negotiations. We never had an issue with Cary. He was the reason we stayed with Sandcrest for as long as we did. When he left, the service fell apart. That quote was now in a public press release. So let's recap. Project Lantern had exposed Sandcrest's internal fraud. Former employees were beginning to come forward. A major client had just defected, and cited me as the reason. A viral PR story was circulating that all but named Sandcrest as ground zero for shady reporting. And Denise? She was clinging to a throne that no longer existed. But I wanted a front row seat to the fall. So I did something petty. Okay, deliberately petty. I RSVP'd for the Seattle Consulting Summit, a quarterly industry gathering of executives, managers, and rising talent. I hadn't attended in a year. Guess who was one of the scheduled panelists? Denise Morgan. Topic: Sustainable growth through transparent leadership. Yeah. Let that irony sink in. The summit was held at the Marriott downtown, with glossy banners and weak coffee in branded mugs. I didn't go as a speaker. I went as an attendee, in a simple blazer, no fanfare. When Denise walked in, flanked by two assistants, she didn't see me at first. She was smiling, confident, but her eyes scanned every corner of the room like a hawk in a storm. She knew. And then, she spotted me. Her smile didn't break. But her face went rigid for half a second. She kept walking, pretending I was invisible. I didn't say a word. But I didn't need to. Because the whispers had already started around her. People glancing at her, then at me. They didn't need confirmation. They'd already read the press release. They'd already seen the article. And some of them were reading Project Lantern. Remember Peter Garland? The board member? He'd gone further than I expected. He'd started quietly forwarding my Lantern report to other consulting firms as a case study in data ethics. I know because one of those firms reached out to me to ask if they could use it in a webinar. Only if you keep my name in the footnotes, I said. Poetic, right? Denise used to mock my obsession with tracking data accuracy. Now that obsession was rewriting her legacy. But there was still one last execution to deliver. It wasn't enough for her to lose. She needed to face the truth. So the night before the summit ended, I slipped a printed copy of Project Lantern, signed and bound, into the envelope on her hotel room door. No threats. No insults. Just a handwritten note inside. Numbers don't lie. But you always did. Cary. The moment I slid that envelope under Denise's hotel room door, I thought I was done. That was supposed to be it. The mic drop. The last move in a game she didn't even know she was losing until the board was gone. But life, as I've come to learn, has a sense of timing that even the best revenge plan can't predict. Because 2 days later, everything flipped again. Only this time. I wasn't the one pulling the strings. I was in my apartment, sipping coffee, reviewing Peterson's rollout strategy, when I got a call from Trina. She never called during the day. Never. Cary. You sitting down? Yeah. What's going on? Denise is gone. I blinked. What do you mean gone? Fired. This morning. No warning. Her calendar just disappeared. And an all-staff memo went out from Peter Garland saying they're initiating a full audit and leadership transition plan. I put my mug down, heart racing. Was the memo public? No. But it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. She tried to spin it, right? Said she was stepping down for personal reasons and would be taking time to reflect. Classic. But Garland replied all, literally, to everyone, and said, for transparency, this decision follows findings from an internal ethics review initiated by an external disclosure. Oh. Oh my God. They outed her. Publicly. That wasn't just damage control. That was a message. A warning to any other execs thinking about cleaning their mess with someone else's reputation. And just when I thought the twist had landed, came the kicker. That night, my phone buzzed again. Devon from North Spire. You'll never guess who just applied for a contractor position through our internal portal. I laughed. No. Yes. You're joking. Denise Morgan. Using a personal Gmail resume under the name D. Marie Consulting. I nearly dropped my phone. He kept going. HR flagged it immediately. But before they could delete it, I took a screenshot. Thought you might want it for the scrapbook. He texted me the image. There it was. Denise Morgan. Former VP. Former saboteur. Former queen of fake growth. Reduced to throwing her resume into the same system she used to ignore every week when we asked for better compensation. But that wasn't even the real twist. No, the twist came the next morning. Peterson's CEO, Lana Keller, requested a follow-up call with me. We hopped on Zoom. She smiled like someone who just opened a bottle of very expensive champagne. We have another opportunity for you, Cary. I'm listening. Sandcrest's board reached out to us privately. Apparently, they're launching a new division under external oversight to rebuild their reputation. They asked if we knew anyone who could lead transformation from the inside out. I froze. Wait, they want me to come back. Not as an employee. As a strategic oversight consultant. Independent. Report directly to the board. High six-figure contract. I laughed. Like, fully laughed. They know I just blew the lid off their whole operation, right? Exactly. That's why they want you. You already exposed everything. You've got nothing left to hide, and no loyalty to protect. And Denise? She's blacklisted. No reputable firm is touching her now. You put a nail in her professional coffin. But the board's trying to save the brand. I didn't say yes right away. I didn't say no, either. But the irony wasn't lost on me. The guy who was kicked out without a goodbye was now being offered the keys to clean up the very place that tried to erase him. That night, I opened the screenshot of Denise's job application again. And I thought about all the times she told me to be patient, think about the big picture, stay loyal. Funny how loyalty becomes a weapon in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to earn it. But what hit me hardest? She never saw it coming. She thought I'd leave quietly. She thought she'd scare me into silence. She thought I'd fade out like every other person she steamrolled. But all I did was tell the truth. And that truth didn't just set me free. It shattered her entire illusion. When Peterson's CEO offered me that contract, to return to Sandcrest as a transformation consultant, I didn't answer right away. How could I? This was the company that spent 4 years squeezing everything out of me and throwing me away like an outdated coffee pod the second I stood up for myself. The place where my ambition was labeled, entitled, where my loyalty was weaponized against me. And now they wanted me back. Not to apologize, but to clean up their mess. Poetic? Absolutely. But I wasn't sure if it was justice, or a trap wearing a nicer suit. So I did what I hadn't done in months. I visited my dad. We sat on the back porch of his small house outside Tacoma, nursing root beers and watching the clouds drift by. He listened patiently as I told him everything: Denise, Project Lantern, the fallout, the contract offer. He didn't interrupt. When I finally paused, he just stared out at the trees and said, "You ever clean out an old barn, Cary?" I blinked. "What?" "You find mice nests, rotted wood, broken tools, maybe a few things worth saving. But it's your choice: burn it to the ground, or rebuild it better." He turned to me then, serious. "You burned what needed burning. The lies, the rot, the ego. But now you've got a chance to build something." He leaned forward. "Question is, do you want to?" I accepted the contract. Not because I wanted to save Sandcrest, but because I wanted to prove what leadership should have looked like all along. No more corner offices with glass walls and fake smiles. No more "next quarter" promises. Just honesty, accountability, and a culture that earned loyalty, not demanded it. Day one of my new role, I didn't wear a suit. I wore a plain gray sweater and jeans. And I didn't take an office. I sat at an open desk, next to the junior analysts who'd been blamed for Denise's failures. Some of them stared at me like I was a ghost. Others smiled. Especially Trina. She hugged me like a survivor welcoming another back from war. "We didn't think they'd ever listen," she whispered. "They're not listening," I said. "They're scared. Which means we finally have their attention." Over the next 4 months, I did what Denise never could. I made Sandcrest human again. Built an open salary framework. Introduced quarterly peer reviews, anonymous, honest, real. Created a development program for overlooked employees with real mentoring. And most importantly, restored the client relationships she fractured. By Q3, retention was up 22%. Revenue had stabilized. And for the first time in years, Sandcrest employees stopped whispering in hallways, and started speaking in boardrooms. I never saw Denise again. Last I heard, she'd moved to Arizona and started a boutique leadership firm. Her LinkedIn profile was still intact, filled with platitudes about transformation and trust. But behind the buzzwords, she was done. Every reference, every whisper in the industry, they all carried the same subtext. Don't trust her. And me? I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd had it. But what I did need, was closure. So I sent her a letter. Just one line. Typed on plain paper. No return address. Sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. No signature. Because she'd know exactly who it came from. I still have the original Project Lantern file. I never deleted it. It's a reminder. That truth, real truth, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper in a hallway. A spreadsheet on a forgotten flash drive. A voice inside you saying, "This isn't right." And if you listen to it, if you act on it, even giants can fall. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.